see.
Hello.
Oh, good. She's gonna log in.
Hello, everyone. You are entering the Zoom interview with Anna New York. This is Mei Xu, the founder of Mei, and welcome to our Meet the Founder session. Today, we're going to introduce to you the brand, Anna New York, and the founder, Anna herself, and how she reimagined interior and home decor with her love of raw materials such as stone and rocks. It's very interesting that, hi Anna. Hello.
Hello.
Very nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you as well.
I think I have some kind Huh? Okay, I need to see if I'm making I'm making some kind of noises here.
Do you want me to look?
No, it's fine, right? Now it's fine. So Anna, I think we are still waiting for a few of the guests, but I can probably start chatting with you. I want to say that you probably have no idea. I had your product as a gift many years ago. I have an amazing interior designer called Mira Moore. You know her? She's working out of Miami and she loves marble. And she designed my house. We finished and moved in 2015. And she gave me 2 pieces from your collection, the bookend, and you probably recognize this. I loved it so much that I had it since 2015 at my desk. So when lovely Allison brought your samples and looked at the samples, I'm like, you know, I wonder if that's Anna that that made those products. That's what a coincidence.
That's amazing. I love the fact that you had those in the past.
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
something nice about revisiting the memory of things like that as well.
And I remember your booth because I used to go to the trade shows in New York as well. And you're on the 2nd floor, the entrance. I always check out you have some tables, small end tables too, right? They're bigger.
That's right. That's right. We make these gemstone end tables.
I remember that. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together with my own sample until when I realized what you do. And I said, that name also sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
So, small world,
My team was just reminiscing about the shows that we used to do pre-pandemic.
Yes. And on such a wonderful note, we say hello again to our wonderful inventor of this new business. I was just reading about how your love with stone started at a very young age, and people start things in very different ways, and rather than playing with dolls and fabrics the way I did, you played something else. So tell us how you started thinking that passion could turn into something amazing.
Yeah, it's a great question. It actually, the trajectory started at a camp called Interlochen, which is this beautiful arts camp in northern Michigan. In fact, my daughter is going to go there for the first time this year in visual arts as well. So my initial love was really in art. I did a lot of ceramics and sculpture when I was young, when I was in my teen years, and simply did it for the love of doing it. It's very different than what kids do today, what my own children do today. It was really just a desire to create and build and create these 3D forms. And I loved how you could basically make statements about what you believed in through the art that you produced. And I always thought that was really fascinating. At the same time, as a kid, my father and I used to go to gem shows because I spent my high school years in suburban Detroit. So I was born in London and lived all over. And then somehow we landed, in sort of suburban Detroit as the last stop. And my father and I went to these shows, and I think I discovered my love of stones during those
That is
shows.
so amazing. Do you think there's something about traveling around the world that also gave you some appreciation of maybe working with? I noticed there's mines in Brazil, or I wonder if you visited the wonderful place in Italy where all the white marbles are from.
Yeah, for
But I'm
sure.
curious.
Yeah, for sure. So in fact, we work very close to that town where all the white marble is from in Italy, which is outside of Florence in Tuscany. And yes, traveling all over the world, first of all, is incredibly inspirational. So travel is one of my greatest loves, and on a personal level, I love to go to exotic places and places that are off the grid. And then, as it turns out, we get to do production in all kinds of fantastic places, like the south of Brazil, where we've been many, many times working with our artisan partners down there. And then in Italy, visiting essentially Carrara, where Carrara
Right.
marble comes from, and working with artisan partners there. And then, we work outside of Barcelona on, with some alabaster mines, and kind of work all over wherever the gemstones are, and wherever there are artisan partners that have the handiwork abilities to transform these materials into designs that people can use every day. That's where you'll find us. And on a personal level, I adore traveling, and I always find it super inspirational. Plus, the best design of work I do is on planes. So the pandemic has been challenging because I'm used to long plane flights in which I'm able to design collections. And without that, I've had to find a different way.
But how, Anna, how did that moment come in your life where after all the shows, and you see all these marvelous stones and nobody did what you did, which is to make them into object of desire. They're like little collections of desire. How did you because most people think about them as a sculpture or think about them as a countertop, or a jewelry, right? There's nothing in between. How did you come up with your business idea?
I think it came from the fact that fundamentally, I'm trained as a product designer. So I went to school for industrial design and then product design. And at the core of being a product designer is a desire to deeply understand what people need and want in their lives. So the kind of the core of the profession is saying, well, what are these unmet needs, either in the marketplace or in people's lives, and how can I fulfill those through design? So in fact, around the time that I launched the company, that I founded the company, I was designing all kinds of medical devices. So I was designing, at that point, devices for cardiac surgery. So for cardiac anastomosis, which is essentially bypass surgery, these
Right.
tiny little staples that went into people's hearts. And I had rediscovered this beautiful stone, agate, which is what we use in a lot of our materials, on a trip to Yosemite, and remembered it from my childhood, going with my father to these gem shows. And the pieces sat on my desk. I had 4 or 5 pieces of this beautiful stone, and the stone's incredible. It was formed inside ancient volcanic streams, so it has all these different patterns. And again, my day job was designing all these these medical devices, which in essence they solve a very fundamental human need, and that need is biological and mechanical.
Right.
And the pieces sat on my desk, and they're not dissimilar in a sense from solving that kind of biological and human need that the devices did, because I kept looking at them and I kept thinking, well, how can I make these into something that people can use? Because through use, object becomes meaningful. When somebody takes something home that I have designed and they actually use it in their lives, they build memories. And if those memories are positive, then they develop an attachment to those objects. And if they develop an attachment to those objects, then there's resonance. And if there's resonance, then there's success, because that object which is inert, it means nothing until somebody imbues it with memories. And so I thought and thought, and they kept sitting on the desk, and I thought, my gosh, like these could become coasters. And this was 20 years ago. This was a long time ago. There were no agate coasters. Now there are many agate coasters. But I had these 4 pieces, and I had always wanted to found a business, and I thought they would be a tremendous product. And I found a photographer who shot them in studio and created a little postcard and sent it out to my favorite stores, including Moss in Soho, which was this wonderful design emporium.
Yes.
And people started calling and saying, we'd love to order these. We had one product, actually only 4 stones. There was no factory, there was no distribution, there was no raw material, just 4 pieces. And then as soon as, Moss called and various people called and said, we want to order, then I turned it into a business. Then it involved finding the raw materials, creating the product, creating the packaging, creating the distribution. It all sort of came from that first initial 4 pieces on the desk.
That is amazing. People always ask me the question about how I started candles, and I try to tell them it's an actual market test, right? Not unlike what you did, is to see what people are interested, and then the smaller stores, actually, what I call the artisan retailers, they really are the most innovative, and sometimes I really miss going into the stores in Manhattan, or particularly now it's been 2 years that I was in Europe. So I miss those called trend shopping days.
Mhm.
And still today, I don't think there are quite as a brand like you. You occupy a very unique space as a woman. Most of your pieces are very organic in shape. It's not a very cold square or angular, what stones are known for. They are more organic. Even some of the cake stand, you take on that more of an organic shape.
Mhm.
But I'm curious about how you decided to add gold and another material, because that, to me, the mixed media aspect is very interesting. It probably sets you apart in a different way. And when did that moment come for the mixed media and the gold and
I think
silver?
I think it's true that the adding of a different material, and since then we've done a lot of mixed media, as you say. That's what kind of brings something from a raw material into something that can actually contain innovation. And
Right.
so I think that's a very exciting moment for me. It's a funny thing. As I was designing these coasters, and then the next coasters were made of crystal. Crystal have these naturally, very beautiful organic edges, which are actually quite sharp as well. So the really interesting thing about them is they're beautiful and fantastic, but if you hold them in your hand, you could actually cut your hand on them. So in
Right.
fact, the inspiration to plate the edges, to create a finishing touch on the edges, was a usability thing, which gets back to this fundamental human need that I thought, if someone picks this up and they cut their hand, like that would be
Right.
awful. We need a way to
Right.
finish this off. So we explored lots of different things, polishing the edges, doing all kinds of things, and eventually the idea came to electroplate them. So the
That's
reason this is an odd and kind of innovative technique is because electroplating is typically a plating technique used
I
with
want to
metal.
show it, so that this is what you're talking about, right? This
Yeah,
is
exactly. The edges on
why
these
the edges
pieces.
are going to be exposed.
Right. And so electroplating, which is how we create the edges on those, typically not used with stone, used with metal. So if you have like a bathroom fixture or something like that, it has typically been electroplated, like a faucet in your
Right.
restroom.
Right.
But the reason you don't do it with stone is because stone doesn't carry an electrical charge. And in order to electroplate, the stone, in fact, has to be electrically charged. So there are all kinds of interesting things we need to do in order to prepare the stone to to let the metal be plated onto it. Like it has to be a receptive host, so to speak. So it does involve some innovation in order to make that happen. And I loved also the romanticism of it, that essentially to create a 24 karat gold plating edge, they put a block of gold inside a tank, and the ions from the gold kind of, let's say, dance through the solution and find themselves on the edges of the stone.
That is amazing when you talk.
Yeah,
I want
it's
to hear.
beautiful. It's this beautiful notion. They have to lock up the bar at night. And,
Yeah.
the interesting thing too is that our stones are so discerning that they will only accept 24 karat gold and pure silver.
Of course,
They
only
won't
for
take
that.
18 karat, and they won't take 925 silver. They'll take 1000 silver, and they'll take 24 karat gold. It's the only thing that works with the stones. So I love the fact that even the stones elevate the process simply by nature of who they are, so to speak. If they were anthropomorphic and to take on an identity of their own. So in the end, like, to our customers, they probably look like finishing touches. Like you have finished off this object, you've made it look complete with these edges. But there's actually a very functional reason, and there's a lot of innovation in terms of manufacturing process behind it. So that was
This is so pretty when you talk about how poetic it sounds. Have you ever captured it in a video? As you know, I feel like, what you're saying, because you and I work with product and the manufacturing process, but many people really don't know where things are made and how they're made. That would have been, even now looking at it, it gives me a whole different appreciation of those stones. But so in terms of the sourcing also, I want you to comment on how easy it is for you from the beginning as a smaller company to be
Mhm.
able to convince all these
Mhm.
places where the rocks are found
Sure.
to help you with that.
Sure. I think the first thing is simply finding those places. So, 20 years ago, the internet was just in its sort of burgeoning stages.
Right.
So, first we had to find where in the world the stones that we wanted to work with came from. And I think, my husband, who is an attorney and very good at researching, he researched in these early days of the internet and found that there were the most prolific mines in the world were in this place in southern Brazil. And we sort of extrapolated and said, I bet there's a town right near there where people are working with the stones. And in fact, there was. And again, it was so these really strange records. We were looking at sort of, minutes from community minutes from like city hall meetings of towns to try to figure out this manufacturer showed up and made a statement at this thing. There were no websites of
Wow.
manufacturers or anything.
I would not
And
be able to do
he
that.
said, I think, and he said to me, he's like, I think that this is where this stuff is being made. And he said, let's buy some plane tickets. So we got a couple of plane tickets and we just flew. We flew in like it was like 3 different flights. The last flight was like a prop flight. Like the plane was like glued together with chewing gum. And we arrived in the middle of this field. And then,
Freaking fun.
yeah, it took
It's
a
a really
truck
fun.
it took a truck that broke down and basically showed up in this town and said, here we are. And again, he's not a designer. He just helped me find the place, but here we are. And I've got this, handful of drawings that I'd like to do some stuff with, and then just built those relationships. And in fact, building those relationships and those artisan partnerships is the most critical piece, because it's, working with those partners for 20 odd years. That's a long relationship. It's a personal relationship. It's a business relationship. It's a relationship in which we help to capitalize the businesses of some of the smaller partners by offering microloans for equipment, by supporting this town. We created a scholarship to send 2 girls to college from this little town a couple of years ago, and we're able to do that as well. So it's showing that we're invested in the fabric of that community, and those relationships that we've built there are very strong. In fact, every manufacturer that we work with, whether they're a small artisan partner or a larger producer, which we have also larger production partners, it is very deeply a relationship that is founded on mutual trust and a desire to collaborate. So manufacturers that we can work with, there are very few. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And even with the metals that we work on, and our fall collection is heavily metal based, like very precise, beautiful metals with stone accents, like an ice bucket that is super precise, double walled stainless steel with this delicate stone on top. The manufacturers who can create pieces of that level of quality, I can count them on one hand. So it's finding them, and then, as you said, it's not so much convincing them to work with us. It's figuring out whether it's going to be a fit, whether their goals and their values align with our goals and our values. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So the
Well,
first part is,
those are really frontier work. I really commended you for the way that you basically created a business idea that no one else have tried. Not only using rock, but using rock to elevate for something, that everybody can feel treasured. I think whoever got this gift from another person, it says so much. It's great taste, it's style, it's design, but it's also such an authentic gift because it's a real stone. It's not a manufactured, synthetic item.
Mhm.
I don't know if you recall a few years, 20 years ago, I think, is when you started the business. There's a very famous architect called Michael Grave.
Oh,
And
sure.
he did the opposite of what you did. He used design and helped Target to
Mhm.
launch into homeware that is very affordable, but
Mhm.
also very low cost.
Right.
So I'm wondering, as we see the extreme sort of affordable design as well as elevating nature into art and something that we can really appreciate. How do you feel that has changed that community that you work with in Brazil, for example?
Yeah. Well, you know, the funny thing is when Michael Graves did that Target collaboration, and he basically took his iconic teapot and
Exactly.
created a version of it. And I think that the whistle of that teapot had some amazing story. It was like the whistle from when he was in the woods in some
Yes,
European town and he was inspired by, I can't remember what it
right.
was. So he
It's
took
amazing.
it and
Yes,
he basically popularized design for the masses. At,
right,
so high design at much more accessible price points with with some quality compromises. Like
right,
the construction of that lid was it was it wasn't the quality level of the original. It was sort of sheet metal and you had to push it in and that kind of stuff. But
right,
I think at the time he basically said, well, I'm willing to make these compromises in order to deliver this product for price points that, across the world and across this country, people can afford, and also to spread the word that like great design is valuable,
right.
is
To
important,
appreciate design.
changes the fabric of your day and changes your experience. It's funny because I don't think the reverb was as strong as I thought it was going to be. Target has done some collaboration since then. They did one with John Darien a couple of years ago as well too. But I thought that that trajectory of popularizing design was going to be sort of more fervent and more widespread than it eventually was. And I still do feel that design is very stratified. There is sort of museum design, like we work with the Museum of Modern Art for many,
Right.
many years on projects. There's museum design that is very rarefied and very modern and almost inaccessible in its aesthetic as much
Right.
as its price points. And then there's sort of the design we do for Bergdorf Goodman, which is also rarefied in its price point and its exclusivity. And maybe we only make 3 of them and we do that sort of stuff. And then there's sort of design that's happening at Home Goods.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there are some players in the middle, but I see a huge, huge opportunity. In fact, I'm in the midst of launching a new brand, which I would love to
Wow.
talk about as well,
I love to hear it.
which fits into that space, which says, still, we want to do this amazing, beautiful design that's resonant, changes people's lives. In this case, brings fun and joy and excitement and authenticity to the home design experience. But it has a more accessible price point, like a price point in which there are products that are under $50 at retail and some under $100. And it doesn't feel so precious that if God forbid you drop it, you're going to have to cry for 100 years. It's not a baccarat, tumbler, which seriously, if you chip it,
Right.
your part is broken. Or vases that I've bought at the MoMA that I invariably chip because I'm very clumsy. And then again, I'm heartbroken. So
Yeah.
for example, some of the pieces, some of the first collection from the new brand, it's called
Wow.
Taliana. So
Beautiful. And
this
I
is a
can't
little
really
tactile
see
thing.
what material is that,
So
Anna.
this is ceramic,
Okay.
and there's a pattern on it in 24 karat gold.
Ah,
The
that's
first collection is also naturally inspired by the giant lily pad that's this gorgeous organism, or plant, you could say, in the UK that looks very, very sort of weak, and yet it's huge, and even a child can sit on it. So it was
right.
inspired by something which seems to be not strong and yet is extremely strong. It's obviously a metaphor for women and what we do and what we create.
Right.
And the whole idea behind this whole collection, and we've designed obviously collections into next year, is that design should be something that everyone or more people can afford. And I
I
strongly believe that because the more that we can disseminate good design into the world, the more that people can take joy in their surroundings, the more that they can story tell, this girl who got on a plane and went to Brazil and met these people and did these
yeah,
things. And
that's
then there
very
were horses
inspiring.
in the middle of the street. And then her son came and he was 9 months old. This was like a subsequent trip. And we carried him around and we went to the factories and he was on our shoulder and he had one tooth and everybody was smiling at him, while I was being a mom and like had this baby and I couldn't leave him and he came along. And someone can tell that story while they're handing off the coasters. And so, for example, Taliana, I'm founding with my daughter who's 12. So her name is
Right.
Talia.
Mm-hmm.
So
Ah,
she's part of the fabric of this brand. So I think, again, that authenticity and the spreading of good design. In my professional career, I worked on so many projects for other companies that perhaps lasted 6 or 9 months, and we created all this beautiful stuff, whether it was research about people or products or whatever it was. And either they were produced and the shelf life was 6 months and we made 500,000 of them if they were electronics, or a million, and then they were gone because they were obsolete. Or we did these beautiful projects and they fell asleep in a drawer somewhere because they never got made or whatever it is. The
Right.
idea with my company is we have the choice. We have the power. Like, there is no bureaucracy. If we want to make something, as long as people will buy it, we can make it. And I think that freedom and that desire to really disseminate design out as widely as it can go, I think is the fundamental feeling.
It's also a very enabling feeling. I completely agree with you. I have a pair of parents that are engineers and school principal. And when I design my product, I always ask, can the school teachers afford them? Because they are so well educated, yet they would never make the kind of money that can enable them to go to a luxury department store. So if they can afford it, that make me feel I've done my job. It's very hard. But what you're doing also with Stone is very inspiring in the sense of going to the sources. As we talk about sustainability, a lot of our women founders in particular are very thoughtful about this. How do you look at your space, and now that you also have a new line, and answer that question? Obviously, all the product you sell, luckily, people will hold on to for their lifetime, right? They're the heirlooms, and I'm going to transfer them to one of my kids one day.
Right.
But for the other line you're collecting, how do you want to sort of keep this sustainable practice?
Sure.
Something that can be produced cheaper, less expensively and easily.
Right. I mean, the first thing I would like to say is, what you built is just astonishing. The business that you built and the accessibility of the products and the quality level is super inspirational, because it is extremely hard, as you said, to create products the school teacher can buy.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I've ever cracked the code. I've always wanted to, but I've never cracked the code. So maybe I'm in the land of the college professor can buy.
Yes.
But not the school.
You're in the elite emerite professors line. My husband is also a professor.
Right.
And he would be able to. By the way, he's Italian, so we really appreciate all the marbles. We actually have visited Clara. I remember the first time I arrived, it was in the summer, and I said, why is that mountain filled with snow?
Exactly.
From a distance, like a snow, everyone. It's amazing. It's a sight to be seen. And once we went on and see the different grade of the statue marble from the marbles with more vines, you really worry if we're going to run out of marbles one day, because
it's true. That's true.
Right? You can see tons of them used in big spaces. The whole mosque in Middle East is built from those white,
from statuary, from that bright white marble. Yeah. I mean, the question of sustainability is an excellent one. Our natural resources are finite. We know that, right? As a professor for so many years myself, and having thought so deeply about what sustainability is, what it means, what our responsibilities are, you are right that for these companies, our notion of sustainability is to create something that continues to resonate, is made of materials that don't change over time. For example, the plastics that I worked on early in my career, after 10 or 11 years, they turn yellow. It doesn't matter if they started their life as gray, they continue to react, right? So it's using materials that stay the same for years and years. We have a stainless steel fruit bowl in our line with the CFAN version, which is 6.2 pounds of solid stainless steel. It will never look any different. It will always look like that. And when you're done with it, melt it down. Like during the apocalypse in the future, take those bowls, create whatever you want to from them, right? So the idea is, by using materials that last forever, by hopefully creating designs that resonate forever, people don't throw them away and they pass them down. That's the notion of sustainability. The resources are finite. The mining practices that are followed are highly, highly regulated. And for example, agate doesn't really involve what you would think of as mining. It's essentially these boulders that are almost in like a sand matrix, that they remove the boulders from the sand matrix. So we try to do things as non-invasively as possible.
Right. Right.
You know, the interesting thing about using ceramics for Taliana is that it's an additive process. So there is very little waste, and that's what I love about it.
Right.
You know, it's not something that you cut something from and you're left over with pieces.
Right. Right.
For the record, even the stone production that is non-additive, it is reductive. In other words, you cut something out of something.
Right.
Every single chip, every single piece is used. So the smaller pieces we use for other things in products like handles and things like that.
Such as your stand for the wines and liquor. I just noticed
Yes,
that.
exactly.
Right?
So yeah,
The stopper.
right, exactly. So other pieces can be used for smaller pieces. And then when you get down to tiny little fragments, they then become something that they sell to use for the paving of driveways. You know, driveways that have little so they have there nothing goes to waste. Like
Right.
absolutely nothing goes to waste. Nothing is discarded. And I
I
think
just know how
that's
good
the example.
everything is when it's so heavy, Anna. You must be always worried about shipping costs because I can tell. That is, we have very good news about a few really important consumers that have houses both here and in China. They say they really want to ship things back to China, and we are still trying to get them the best rate possible. So the good news is we convinced FedEx that it's important to be able to ship that way too, not just from China to
The other
here.
direction.
Yeah, and I do see
Yeah.
the appreciation. You know, they're very quickly catching on with what they really want in life. They used to have a lot of sort of consumerism after some of the luxury brands with a logo, but like
Oh, sure.
in other countries, after exposed to them and traveling to places, I think they come to appreciate those pieces. They're very good at spotting what we added in our website when it's from countries or places and the product is authentic. That's the most most
And I think it's also the evolution of sort of a burgeoning upper middle class that you
Right.
begin with liking everything which is branded, like big Prada logos,
Right.
and then as that kind of group of people becomes more and more confident in their status,
Right.
then there's the ability to look at brands that are less well known
Right.
and that don't have such prominent logos and things like that. So I see it as an evolution of a consumer market,
Yeah, and
which I think is
a
fascinating.
healthy market, right? That way, you know, everyone has a voice and they're pursuing different voices. The companies that are logo driven will not get everyone's attention, and we will give more creative license to companies like yours.
Yes, I
It's
hope
such
so.
an interesting. I always enjoy listening to how other people started their business. So I'm glad you're launching yet a one. Are you thinking about going back to New York now? We are going to visit in August. Do you think you'll be back there or no?
You know, it's such an interesting question, and in fact, all the American brands are all conferring with each other right now to try to figure out what to do. I think the consensus is we won't be doing any shows this year. We're not going to do the New York show, and we're not going to do Maison et Objet either.
Right,
I
right,
think we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and even though especially I'm here in the Silicon Valley,
right,
here Manhattan, all kinds of places are doing extremely well with vaccinations, and I think
right,
we're at something like a 70% vaccination rate where I live, which is
right.
fantastic. Even our kids are vaccinated, everybody's vaccinated. It's really
Yeah.
a safe space. I think it's not time yet to go in to be inside a convention center for 5 days. I just don't think it's time yet, you
Please
know.
don't tell Allison. She just signed up to go.
Yeah, but she
She's
doesn't
going.
but also visiting the show is really different than doing the show. Visiting the show, coming in and out is really different. I think also in perfect frankness, the pandemic for us simply exposed things which needed to change.
Mhm.
It
Okay.
just amplified things that were already not working. It just made them not work more or made them work very much if they were already working.
Well, the
And I
trade
think
show has never been very productive for many reasons. So I do
yeah.
feel the lack of availability, though, because it's easier for a lot of product, but particularly for your kind of product, I do feel the weight, the finishing, it's just you cannot transfer that through any videos.
You are right, and it's going to be really tough because we are trying to figure out ways that we can show those products and virtually communicate that, which includes sending out little packages of product and doing things
Right.
like that to our customers. Yeah, there's nothing like touching and feeling the product and also seeing it in context because, you know, that booth you were referencing at New York Now, we have this wonderful stylist who comes from the fashion world who styles that booth and brings in vintage furniture and really makes it look. We can't replicate that without doing the shows. But the truth is, there's got to be a different way than those trade shows to build our brands. And I think that's what all of us are really thinking about. What can we do?
Yeah, it's
Is
really
a
hard
different way to
also
do
because even in the retail store, I was in Macy's and, you know, Nordstrom's to get something for my kids, and they don't have anything. They only have the COVID ready, you know, lazy shoes for, you know, everybody stay at home. There's really nothing that inspire you. You don't want to open your wallet because there's nothing that wants you to do that. So I just feel the world of retail consumer is definitely waking up to a very rude reality.
I think so too. And these bigger companies that have struggled so much are not interested. They're not able to take chances right now. So I'm not surprised you just found lazy shoes and boring stuff
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this is a conversation we're having over and over in which we are pitching new designs and new concepts and things like that. Even for, you know, some of our partners that we design for, and they're basically saying we can't take any chances right now.
Right.
And
It
that's a
is
dangerous spot to be in. I would say my company has done exactly the opposite during the pandemic. We have taken a lot of chances. And I think that's we took an opposite approach because if we don't do this right now, then things are just going to continue the way that they did, which was already retail was changing so much.
It is. It is. And on that note, I thought maybe we open to some questions from the audience. I cannot see all the questions, but let me see. Maybe we ask Allison, because Allison wants to catch up with you. I know that for sure. But Allison, do you have any ideas what you're going to do with the New York Gift Show? Since you heard that Anna is not going.
I think even on the digital platforms, and this will be an extension, the re-entry will be an extension of the digital platforms that, as Anna knows, for years, you knew who was going to be at each show, that Anna would be at this show and so would be at the other show. And then in the digital world, it kind of gave everyone even ground, but then they all kind of shifted between checking out how the digital setups were, which was more useful for them. And, you know, as we know, there's no going back. So we'll now have a new development in the physical shows, and some people will maintain a digital presence, you know, and just work wholesale that way. And some people will go back in because we do still want to interact and see each other and touch and feel the products. So I think now the disruption in retail is going to also exist in the wholesale, as we kind of know, formats.
I think
I thought that was so insightful, excuse me, of what you said about how people start, you know, as they elevate, subscribe, as I see, to brands, and then they get to a certain confidence, as you said, and then they no longer want the identification to the labels, you know, for them to, they want to self-identify and not to be so committed to the labels. I thought that was a great way of saying that.
Yeah, I thank you. I think it's a really interesting thing because in the end, if we're talking about helping people to feel authentically themselves at home, then the evolution of somebody's confidence is expressed in what they purchase. So the more you feel confident in your choices and the more evidence you have that your choices are successful, you know, whether it's, you know, buying one of our pieces that, that seems like, you know, like the bowl that you have, buying that piece and then seeing that when somebody gives you a call and says, I'm going to be in your house in 30 minutes, you can simply just run and throw whatever you have, like, you know, some beautiful nuts or whatever it is, into a bowl and put it on the table. And suddenly you feel like an expert. And that's evidence that then says to you, you know what, I am really good at entertaining. And I don't really have to prepare a lot in advance. And what I have surrounded myself with are really good choices. I'm a really good decision maker. Okay, now I have confidence. Let me try something else. And I think that's the evolution in confidence that I think comes with time and, again, with experiences.
Smart.
So
very interesting insight. I do have a follow-up question about your love of travel. how have you been since you can't travel and probably won't be for a while? And what would be the first place you want to travel other
Oh
than
my
Brazil,
gosh.
other than Brazil, when you can resume that?
Oh my gosh. It has been for those of us that barely unpacked a suitcase for many, many years and really lived from leaving things in the suitcase and just refilling it. It has been a really different existence. And I think my love of travel, I think, has not abated. And yet somehow during this period, I have made peace with it. And I think, to be honest, I'm riding my bike a lot. And we live in an area in which you can get to sort of a very natural reservoir within minutes. So I ride my bike in the evenings close to sunset, and I sort of escape from the house or escape from the office and ride into a land that feels very different, there are deer and it's beautiful. And, again, it's in the middle of the Silicon Valley, but it's still beautiful. In terms of where I would like to go, there are so many places. I have been back and forth to New York for family reasons during this period, so I have been on a plane, which has given me, some freedom. But yeah, I think probably the first place is Japan. So my son has been studying Japanese for the past 3 years.
Oh, I see.
And he was meant to go on a school trip, a 2-week school trip to Japan to kind of culminate his middle school experience, which was canceled. We have somebody on our team who's in Tokyo, so somebody who's worked for the company for a very long time. So I have never been to Japan in all these travels, and I think I'm so interested in the design scene and the food
Exactly.
and
I
the
was going to tell you.
artistry and the nature,
Right.
and I think that's probably, we're talking about next summer. That's probably like the number one place we'd like to go.
There's so many bespoke teapot shops, and the color black and the color of blue. They use them in ceramics. You will be very inspired, particularly with your new line of ceramics. It's a very interesting culture where the patterns and the styles of the patterns, they're always timely,
Yeah,
timeless.
true.
They're timeless, in a way.
But
I think we
yeah, please go ahead.
go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
going to
I'm
say,
sorry.
honestly, just, I got so used to going to Paris a couple of times a year, just to go to Paris again and to go to our favorite patisserie and to walk along the Seine and just, I long for those easy moments.
Well, it's within reach. We're actually thinking of going back to Italy hopefully this August to see
Mm,
our older family members. We haven't seen them now, for almost 2 years. So it's a lot of life changing. One of my in-laws is now in a senior citizens home. He
mhm.
was living at home, so that's my father-in-law, and we really look hopefully that by then things are even more open.
Yeah, I hope so. That'll be
They've had
wonderful.
such a hard time. They've had a hard time. I think we have some questions for you, Anna. The first question is from our creative director, Karina. She actually has followed your work since we worked with you, and she said, "I love all your pieces and style. What is your most popular item?"
Mm. Our most popular item, our most popular collection is actually, our two most popular collections are marble and metal. So we have a collection called the Dual Collection, which is a vase that has a marble base and a metal top. And we have a collection called the Kaluna
Right.
Collection, which also has marble base and metal top. And the silhouettes are very modern, but they're not, as you said, stark. They're still organic in the shapes of them. And I obsess down to the 0.1 millimeter on the product, so that curvature has to be like exactly right. And in fact, we create it in high-tech CAD, and then it's made by hand eventually. So those two are our most popular collections, and of course, along with our original pieces like the bowls and the coasters and the platters made of crystal, which is
Right.
top selling color. But a lot of the expansion and the new products.
Yeah,
And I love marble. Marble's so fun to work with.
it is, and they're not never the same. She has a follow-up question about the town that you source the product, the rocks in Brazil, because she's from Argentina, and I
Okay.
think her husband is from Brazil, if I remember correctly. So
Yeah, it's a town that's near Porto Alegre. So if you know that region, it's kind of over land and sea. But we fly into Porto Alegre. That's the third flight, and then pick up a truck from there.
That sounds like a really sort of
Yeah,
out of the movie kind of scene. You know, I can see the truck is needed because of the samples you probably want to bring or ask them
right.
to ship. So there's just a lot of memories going. And now the kids are older. Are they hoping to go back as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think, my kids are old enough that I like to take them around with me. And,
Right.
next time we do the Paris show, I will bring them. They actually, if you've been to our booth in New York now, you may have seen them. They
Oh,
have
right.
little business cards. So my daughter is the head duster, although Janelle doesn't like to relinquish that title, but she allows my daughter to use this very special feather duster that she has. And my
That
son
does
also was like a junior salesman. So I like to be honest, I like to have them involved in the business. I like them to see where
very
their
helpful.
mom goes.
Right.
And in fact, my daughter is super interested in I think really the commercial side of design. I would say maybe
Well,
even less so than the
you
fine
come
art.
you should know also that I have older kids than yours, and guess what? They exactly follow
Yeah.
there's mother steps because all of them are interested in some form of design, and they
Yeah.
all decided that they all want into some kind of business as well. So I do
Uh-huh.
feel without too intentional, we are our models for them in
Yes.
many ways. I have another question for you. Do you have home decor advice for someone who loves a bunch of different styles?
Mm. Home decor advice for someone who loves a bunch of different styles. I keep using the word resonance, but I think for someone to know what they should purchase, there's something about the object they look at which will speak to them. So when you are walking through a store or through a trade show and you see something which suddenly you say, my gosh, there's something familiar about that. There's something that feels to me that I am suddenly comfortable. I feel relaxed when I see that object.
Mhm.
Then that's the style to begin with.
Right,
I
right.
don't mind. I mean, I don't mind it aesthetically when people merge all kinds of different styles together. I think
Mhm.
there's a place for design to be mixed and matched, and the old rules don't apply anymore. So you can
Exactly.
have, yeah, you can sort of have shabby chic next to something which
Right,
is ultra modern, next to an
right,
artifact that you found on, a trip to Borneo to whatever it is. But I
right,
think in the end, for a place to feel authentic, when you look at the objects, they have to look relaxing.
right.
And and that's what can get you in touch with things, especially if you're not confident and you don't know exactly what to do.
Well, I think maybe this question also arrived from a fact that a lot of us seems to be a little bit more confident when it's about dressing ourselves, and not so much when it's about a huge space, as we relatively unfamiliar with how to decorate, also because there are other members of a house versus just for yourself. So how do you create this home that may allow different, like you said, different styles coexist harmoniously?
Mm,
And I think you're right, it's a sense of comfort to you, or you feel that there's no rhyme or reason why when blue and white get together, they just feel more peaceful. But when you put
mhm,
blue with a fuchsia, it just feels a little bit more spicy and a little bit more
right,
shocking, but it gives you that kind of energy, right? So
mm,
I do feel that the sense of style is it's gained over a long period of time. Go over when you travel and you are in Istanbul and you love the intricate designs, and then you go to Japan and everything is so minimalist. And
mhm,
there's going to be that moment where you say, oh, this is where I feel at home. And
right.
I want that for me. I want that hotel for me. I want that store for me. I remember a lot of the boutiques in the left bank when I go to Paris, which we do. We visit all the Maison Objet, particularly in September because it's such a wonderful time to go.
Yeah,
It's not as cold.
true.
So I think the art of mixing things up is really here to stay.
I agree with you, and I really like what you said about, in some ways, it being easier to choose the clothes that we wear. Then it is, and a large space being intimidating. And the funny thing about garments is we can take them off at the end of the day and try something new the next day.
That's true.
And the thing about home objects is, especially if you've invested in them, they sit on your mantelpiece or on your table, and they're not permanent, but they feel awfully permanent because
They
they're
are very
big and they sit there and they don't get put away. And I think if we can break down our homes into a series of nooks and crannies and almost like, let's say, vignettes, so that the shelf which is next to your favorite books becomes a vignette, and the little corner where you have a coffee table and a chair becomes a vignette, and the little space where you even have a cabinet that you're storing your things in during pandemic, your business things in, that also becomes a little vignette. Then if you've styled each of those little corners, I think that's much less intimidating than looking at the overall space. And then it doesn't matter if each of them has a different style, because each of them has sparked joy in you and the way that you viewed them and decorated them. And I think
exactly.
that's
And it's
the
also
way
less intimidating, right? It's also less intimidating. You're not eager to furnish them. I also learned by moving so many times that one of the biggest mistake is to go to a showroom when you're trying to buy a house and try to fill every single space, because it's often wrong. And you have to live in a house to see the lights, to see the four seasons, to see what it looks like in the rain and what it looks like in the snow. And by being able to see what you really need and adding it thoughtfully, that's where you get the best result.
I agree with you. It's a process which changes.
Yeah.
And I think when we feel that things are mutable, then we feel free. So if in your home you think, my gosh, I could change this tomorrow, and I haven't identified what needs to be here, and that's fine, I will decide later. And
Yes,
none of this is permanent. I think once you understand that none of it is permanent, it frees you up to make choices.
exactly.
When things feel like they're forever, that's when I think we get stuck.
Yeah, people feel very much a big commitment, right? With getting married to someone, getting married to a poster, getting married to a painting.
Right.
It's such an interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it, Anna, and I know that we're going to reach out to you when you're launching your ceramic pieces. I feel that people are spending more time, and it's not going to change at home. This whole cocooning, this whole nesting, because of the pandemic, has given people an insight of how much they could enjoy. Like you said, you have made peace, and a lot of people have arrived at that conclusion that going to a restaurant, the cool restaurant that everyone waited for, is not that cool at the end of the day. It's a highway robbery after $500 for 4 people. So why not cooking at home? Why not cocooning at home? So I
Yes.
do feel that's a very timely introduction, and I hope you're very big success.
Oh, thank you. And I love your use of the word cocooning to kind of celebrate what we have become at home. And
Yes.
yeah, I would love to share more about that brand and that launch, and to get
And
your
the
feedback.
way you describe your journey is so beautiful. We are lucky to have you and taped it, and we wish to make it into a great story to share, because we follow your beautiful photography, by the way, and it's always a pleasure to see them in such a very sensual way. Usually an object like that is done in a black background with very harsh lighting, and I like how you move it into nature, not even inside, and landed that very lively but very lush background. So congratulations on all the great work.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, and I'm so honored and privileged to be a part of this conversation. So
And
I've
hopefully,
really enjoyed speaking with you.
I do too. And I'm hoping that, when the things are opening up, we will do some Christmas event here in the Embassy Row. We have a lot of ambassadors, a lot of guests that we will hope to share your product during the holiday season when they're shopping for holidays. So we now have a great lineup to showcase. I can't wait for the fall collection.
Wonderful, and we look forward to being a part of that.
Excellent. And thank you everyone for the idea. They love your vignette idea. That's a great idea. So thank you for all the listeners and thank you for the good questions. Anna, have a great afternoon. And we shall see your new lineup and collection soon.
That sounds great. Thank you again for your time, and it was my privilege.
It is such a pleasure. Have a great one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.